Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to the Season 8 premiere of Factions of Freedom. I have titled this episode, Reforming the World, Criminalizing Contemplation, and Our Image of Man. Why? Because the world has not seemed to get, it hasn't slowed down. It's actually increased in craziness. It feels so good being back in the saddle. Even though we had that 2-week break, it doesn't really feel like we took a break. Obviously, we still put out content. Obviously, we still did everything that we were doing. And now that we're here, back on the main transmission, boy, I tell you, it feels good to be back in the saddle. Fellowship and freedom is something else, as well as the Instagram lives and the page. But doing this, being here, consolidating all this information and putting out this type of content, you couldn't keep, wild horses could not keep me away. And it is an honor to be here amongst you good people doing this type of work. We have a lot of things lined up for you guys as far as Season 8, a lot of collaborations and a lot of growth. All I can do is hope that I am effectively able to convey all that we are doing. Let me tell you, I'm fired up. I don't want to spoil too much. And with that being said, let's start the show. Salutations, my friends. Salutations. That's right. It's Season 8. We're here. And we have got a lot to cover. Seems like 2018 was just the beginning. I feel like we definitely kind of found our stride and our groove during all that chaos that was going down. Doesn't really feel like I took that much of a break. If you guys didn't listen to the episodes with Patrick Vinson and Riza Islam on Fellowship and Freedom, I'll put them in the links in the description bar below so you can check it out. Or go to our website, factionsoffreedom.jimdo.com. And once you're there, click the podcast tab. Check out all that we really have to offer. You know, prior to actually recording this episode, January 24th, 2019, it's Thursday. You know, I've been doing a lot of Instagram Live lately, talking to you guys directly. I need to set up a system to where you guys can ask me questions, but where we can have more camaraderie, more discussions. As you see, oh man, how do you start this off? I didn't even tell you guys about the United for Common Ground summit that we went to. With how amazing that was. You know, how do you start off season 8 of something so random, so chaotic? It's nuts. You know, we have so much information and so much content to try to deliver to you guys. It blows my mind. And there's so much more that I would like to do to get the kind of content that I prefer for you to have out there. But there's only so much one person can do. And Instagram is only one platform. Is only one of, as I called them before, appendages. One of those limbs. Just as the podcast has its purpose, so does the page. And the website as well. The video content as well as the audio content. I want to do a lot more expansion this year. A lot more collaboration, a lot more networking, and a lot more growth overall. You know, I think the break was necessary for my reflection because I don't really, you know, take the time to understand everything that's going on. You know, what we're putting out, how it's affecting people, you know, the perceptions that are being developed, the people that are looking. You know, I've had a lot of time to kind of look at not only the audience during the break, but also myself. You know, what's driving me? Why I'm doing these types of things. What I really truly do care about. And how I wish I could capture more of my thoughts and put them together for you guys in a coherent manner. And I don't realize that it's already 2019 and we're growing still. You know, we're just getting started. They're trying to censor us. As you guys have heard me talk about, you know, we have apps in development, trying to get onto the local radio. We want to do more video content. There's a lot of, we have a lot of achievements to highlight and a lot of growth that comes with this. And I think part of it is our perception upon it and how we actually have to implement it, follow through, continue it. Make it normal. You know, there's a lot of different things that we're going to be covering. And if you guys didn't listen to or watch part 1 and 2 of the United for Common Ground Summit video or audio. I'll put that in the links in the description bar below, because you guys have got to understand that we're talking with people like the Minds Unleashed, Collective Evolution, even RT was there, you know, mainstream media, the Free Thought Project, Anti-Media, Activist Post, Conscious Life News. So many amazing outlets were there trying to figure out exactly what we're doing right here, how to expand, how to grow, how to streamline this content delivery. This is why, again, I wanted to have Riza Islam on to talk about community outreach, how we build. You see, the responsibilities of informing people are now on us. We expect everybody to be as informed as we are, and a lot of people don't necessarily steep themselves in this type of research. They don't engage or participate in these types of things. They call it conspiracy theory, because that's the only thing that they can recognize it as, when clearly it's much more than that. And as we see this change taking place, we have to realize that we cannot go back. Some of these agendas, such as Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, are right around the corner. And and this is something I've really learned in the reflection time that I haven't, been with you guys on the podcast so much. I've been talking to you directly on Instagram Live. It's not the same. But we have to inject ourselves into this discussion. They commonly like to act as if we don't exist, but they know what we're doing. Both mainstream and alternative. Celebrities and people of power, intelligence agencies. We've grown a lot. I know the operation has. Content has. Everything has. So I know who's paying attention. And that's why we have to, we owe it to them to do better, to step our game up. And at the same time, really, as I said before, inject ourselves in this conversation. You see. Now, somebody who has, let's get this show started. Let's kick this show. Let's get this thing on the road. Someone that's injected themselves in mainstream discussions, and this is something I talked with Patrick Vincent about, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's recently been talking about the Green New Deal. Now, for people who didn't listen to the episode with Patrick Vincent, I'll give you a quick lowdown. In one of the segments, we had a caller call in and say, hey, isn't Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez basically pitching Agenda 21? And we had a fantastic breakdown of just that, of what Agenda 21 is, what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is pushing, and what this means for, I suppose, our generations and the coming ones. You know, she likens it to World War III. She thinks that this is our next great battle. And if you guys have been paying attention to what I've been saying, she's essentially talking about Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, sustainable development. The Green New Deal, as they would have it. She is basically being funded by the United Nations to put out these types of talking points, and whether or not, and this is something we'll see throughout 2019, whether or not they hit or miss is debatable. Whether or not she has this long-standing attention, that's up for debate. But she, right now, at the start of the year, is being used as basically the figurehead to push forward more of these ideas. Now, I'm going to play for you guys a clip where she says that the world's going to end in 12 years. Strangely enough, right around the time that Agenda 2030 would be in implementation, you see. The world's going to end in 12 years, and we've got to figure out a way to stop it. So let me go ahead and play for you Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about global warming.
And I think that the part of it that is generational is that millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And like, this is the war. This is our World War II. And I think for younger people, we're looking at this and we're like, how are we saying let's take it easy when 3,000 Americans Americans died last year? How are we saying let's take it easy when the nth person has just died from our cruel and unjust criminal justice system? How are we saying take it easy when the America that we're living in today is so dystopian, with people sleeping in their cars so that they can work a second job without health care, and we're told to settle down? It's a fundamental separation between, that fierce urgency of now, the why we can't wait that King spoke of, that at some point these chronic realities do reach a breaking point. And I think for our generation, it's reached that. And I wish I didn't have to be, doing every post, but sometimes I just feel like people aren't being held accountable. And until we all start pitching in and holding people accountable, I'm just going to let them have it.
So there's a lot of things to look at right there. If you guys have been paying attention to anything that, Governor Jerry Brown of California, anything that he says, it's borderline almost word for word what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said. Now, she took her time explaining this at an MLK event on Martin Luther King Day. Keep that in mind. She used that as a podium to basically get across the idea, likening it, as I said, to World War II. The Congresswoman turned psychic declared that climate change was our own, quote, World War II, and predicted that the world will end in 12 years if we don't address the problem. Think about that. She sounds like Al Gore in his movie Inconvenient Truth. Now, I won't come up here and talk to you guys about how climate change doesn't exist, things like this, it's a conspiracy theory. Towards the end of 2018, we heard that what? Bill Gates and Harvard were teaming up to do just that. Spray stratospheric aerosol injections. So climate change is very, very real. I would definitely like to, I'm curious to see where this really goes. We have to kind of talk about this real quick. How are we going to pay for our version of World War II? 3,000 people died last year. Was that of climate change? We don't know. She didn't really say. A dystopian America. And another thing, too, that we're seeing is this word of accountability and urgency. This is why she's running around the country saying, hey, look, we got to fix this. The world's going to end. This is it. This is it. This is it. It's because she's getting this money. She's making these talking points. She's hearing it all. This is, as I've said before, this is the next hurdle. This is the world government. This is the shifting, you see, where we give up our national sovereignty towards this global idea. How is everyone going to fight climate change? You've got to be held accountable. You've got to cut back on water. This is something we're going to be getting into here shortly. How California, their new governor, recently wanted to tax water. And we've been seeing that they want to ration water. They're doing a lot of different things in California because just that. Governor Jerry Brown is basically turning California into a technocracy. That's why they're getting involved in universal basic income. As I said before, taxing the water, rationing electricity, and all kinds of other things. This is what Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 is. It's the guise of trying to save the planet, coming through as their saviors, as our saviors, saying, look, our current, as she said, chronic reality is, as they say, unsustainable. So we've got to radically shift it. This is that sense of urgency. Everything is currently dystopian. We have the solution. The solution is give us all of the money and we'll tell you some solutions. And that's kind of crazy. How are you going to pay for it? We're going to tax the rich. Speaking of which, this is, I think, a good point to pivot into things like Davos. We have all kinds of Americans distracted by this MAGA hat situation. And I think before I get into Davos, I think this is a good. I want to just speak on this real quick. And you've heard me talk about this to you guys directly if you've been paying attention to the Instagram stories and the Instagram lives. Part of being a free-thinking individual is being able to spot the media manipulations so that you do not fall prey to your emotions and to everything that they are trying to play you with, play you against. I think it's apparent that we see a racial civil war brewing here in America. and they are chomping at the bit to try to put everybody against everyone. And I feel like that's very dangerous. At what point do we even listen to mainstream media? You see, this is, again, why why I find this all so very interesting. We recognize the power of alternative media, yet we still let mainstream media dictate our emotions of the day. This is why every day I'm not necessarily covering this MAGA hat development and more of these types of, I guess, baseless claims, wasteless parts of information, garbage information. And while people are focusing on this type of stuff, the media manipulations, right? We have world leaders meeting. You have the world's richest gathering in Davos, Switzerland, to tackle things like global poverty, but key leaders are missing. And this is people like Theresa May from the UK, because she's dealing with Brexit. Emmanuel Macron from France, because he's dealing with the yellow vest situation. Now, that's right, because people are rebelling in his country. They don't want this globalism that we see manifesting everywhere. And Donald Trump is not there because he's dealing with the government shutdown. We're going on what, like day 31 or day 32? And this standoff is costing our country all kinds of money. Some people are saying, oh, you'll have some people within the QAnon sphere saying that, oh, he's trying to smoke out the resistance. And while he's smoking out the resistance, people aren't necessarily getting their paychecks. Some people are living paycheck to paycheck. And so while we have world leaders meeting, right, Trump says, oh, I'm not going to go there. And I get this. America first. He's trying to, make America great again. But this is what happens when we're making America great again. We end up bickering still about a hat and being triggered by colors, while the rest of the world is gradually making this shift, you see. Let me get into this article. It's from Sign of the Times. We put this up January 22nd. It says, world political and business elites are gathering in Davos, Switzerland for an annual forum on how to tackle global problems, like the increasing wealth gap between the rich and the poor. Several key leaders will be missing, though. This year, the leader of the U.S., the UK, and France will not be attending the World Economic Forum due to domestic troubles. As I said before, Donald Trump is busy with the government shutdown here in America. Theresa May is bogged down by Brexit negotiations, complete with defiant MPs and unyielding EU officials. And Emmanuel Macron has crowds of yellow vest protesters outraged at his austerity reforms. Arguably, the biggest political name on the guest list is German Chancellor Angela Merkel. On the other hand, Davos will be the first international visit for Brazil's controversial new president, Jair Bolsonaro, who is to deliver a speech later on Tuesday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a fellow right-wing strongman, is attending too, despite facing corruption allegations and strong competition in the upcoming snap election at home. As the gathering takes place, a new report by the British charity Oxfam released last week said that the world's 26 wealthiest people own as much as the poorest half of humanity, a new record of inequality for an increasing economically disparate world. Quote, we are seeing the picture is getting worse and worse. More and more wealth is being concentrated in the hands of fewer and fewer people each year. Quote, Oxfam's Tony Pierce told RT's Going Underground program, that wealth goes untaxed while the poorest people pay a huge amount of taxes, and then the very little tax money is being able to be spent on things like healthcare or education, which could be an equalizer for the people living in poverty. Tackling poverty is one of the most persistent issues discussed at Davos, where the most powerful people in the world get together over champagne and caviar and talk about how this problem can be solved. As the Oxfam report shows, these discussions don't really result in tangible solutions. So basically what they're saying is the world's richest are meeting. They're trying to say, hey, we see these people are getting poor. Should we give them some money? Could I please have some more caviar, sir? Thank you. I have to contemplate on the blight of the poor. This is, some of the hypocrisy that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Check this out. At the Davos summit, they received nearly 1,500 jets. So none of these self-appointed hypocrites who will actually arrive at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, actually believe in the nonsense that they're attempting to sell to the public. According to reports, nearly 1,500 private jets are expected to land there this week. This is, kind of what Leonardo DiCaprio did a few years ago. Whenever he flew in on his private jet, and was just like, we need to cut back on our carbon emissions, on our carbon footprint. You see. So this is what I'm trying to talk to you about real quick. While we may not be in attendance at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, we have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez doing everything that she needs to do to pitch these ideas here, saying that we're poor, and she does have truth to it. We're poor. We need to tax the rich. You see, 26 ultra-wealthy billionaires now have as much as the poorest 3.8 billion people. And think about this. And I just want to get into this real quick, with the time that we have, because it's important. But check this out. We put this up January 22nd. It's from the Drudge Report feed. It says Davos is scared of the 70% tax proposal targeting the wealthy. The elite financiers attending the World Economic Forum are worried about the 70% tax rate on the earnings above $10 million proposed by freshman Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Quote, it's scary, Scott Miner, Global Chief Investment Officer for 265 billion Guggenheim Partners, said in an interview. Quote, by the time we get to the presidential election, this is going to gain more momentum, said Miner, who added that he would probably be personally impacted by it. Quote, and I think that the likelihood that a 70% tax rate or something like that becomes policy is actually very real. The billionaires and millionaires attending Davos had misgivings about Ocasio-Cortez's proposal, which she made during a recent interview on CBS's 60 Minutes. A poll found that 59% of voters were in favor of the idea, and even 45% of the Republicans liked it. The lawmaker has turned heads in Washington, D.C. and on Wall Street with her left-wing economic rhetoric, despite only being sworn into office earlier this month. Ocasio-Cortez, who represents part of Queens and the Bronx, identifies as a democratic socialist. So I'm going to go ahead and pause right there, because basically what we're talking about, I really think this is things like universal basic income. They're going to try to figure out a way to say, oh, how do we give the poor people money? How do we give them free money? You see, this 70% tax rate is going to do more than you think. But this is what I mean. We're controlling resources, essentially, is what they're talking about. How do we have unilateral access to things like water, food, air, because that's going to be essential in the future as well. This is why they're talking about stratospheric aerosol injections, controlling the climate, and modifying the weather. You see, these resources, and this is why they're promoting basically this scarcity idea, this scarcity reality, overpopulation, and things of this nature, is so that they can, again, as I've said before in previous seasons in the past, control resources, sell us free energy. Their idea first is they have to pollute it to such a disgusting, wicked way to where we just give it over. This is also part of a long-term agenda as well, to get us inside of these domed encased structures, these matrices, these smart cities, these buildings. But this is another discussion for another day. Let me jump into this article right here. We put this up January 15th. It's from Sign of the Times. It says California's new governor proposes taxing drinking water. Just when you thought California cannot possibly come up with more things to tax, the new governor, Gavin Newsom, decides to tax drinking water. In Newsom's first budget proposal on Friday, the communists included a tax on drinking water. The new budget, titled, quote, California for All, declares drinking water a fundamental right. Now, I would agree, yet proposes a tax to that right. Quote, the budget includes short-term measures to bring immediate relief to communities without safe drinking water, and also proposes an ongoing sustainable funding source to address this problem into the future. The San Francisco Chronicle reported that the details of the proposed tax are unknown. However, a small proposal was abandoned by then Governor Jerry Brown last year after failing to garner enough support in the legislature. According to Breitbart, critics have already slammed the plan. Former Republican gubernatorial candidate Travis Allen is urging fellow Republicans to, quote, take back the state on social media, and Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association and the Association of California Water Agencies are saying that the state should tap into its budget surplus to pay for the needed clear water supplies. So I'm going to go ahead and pause real quick before I finish reading that. Flint still doesn't have clean water. Flint still doesn't have clean water. We can get all excited, you know, about MAGA hat. Oh, we can get excited about fake Indian, real Indian. No one wants to talk about Standing Rock. Oh, no one wants to talk about Flint. No one wants to talk about Minnewaukee. Water is life. How it's being polluted. And now you have California over here trying to propose these taxes. Getting back into this article, it says Newsom is using the typical Democrat line of, quote, helping the poor clean up their water as an excuse to tax what he calls a, quote, right. And according to the Sacramento Bee, not everyone thinks taxing drinking water is a bad idea. Quote, we're excited, said Anya Radabal, the CEO of Western United Dairymen. We appreciate Governor Newsom's commitment to providing a long-term solutions to drinking water in our communities, and we're looking forward to providing a solution that includes certainty for our dairy producers. And so this is basically Agenda 21, resource wars, controlling these types of things. Remember, Elon Musk said he was going to try and start fixing some of the water filtrations out there in Flint as well. So now we have corporations getting involved in the controlling of resources. I mean, don't even get me started on things like Nestle. Corporations like Nestle. And my whole thing becomes, you know, and this is just kind of, you know, for personal reference, I'm going to be moving from my house here soon. And one of the things is I just can't get behind the water, you know, and how gross it is. So I'm going to be moving to a better house to where I can have better water filtration systems in there, because, you know, this is atrocious. And I'm very conscious of these types of things. Water, earth, sunlight, air, you know. Don't even get me started on having 3 dogs inside, quality of air, and how much they like to play outside, and the dirt that they track in. But my point is this: all of these types of things do accumulate, and these are the types of things that these people in the future are going to think about, or at least now they're thinking of it to try to invest in the future. This is their idea: help the poor. Everything you've heard me talk about in this entire segment comes from politicians having that whole stance where they say they're going to help the poor, taxing water and saying, I will help you, I'll get you cleaner water, just, you know, keep drinking that until they get enough money to clean it. And that's crazy. That's crazy. But it won't stop there, you see, because then you'll have to ration a certain amount of water. You'll have to share a certain amount of water. You'll only be able to have a certain amount of electricity. You know, and I've been saying this in the Instagram story and to people lately. You know, you have the same 24 hours in a day as everyone else. Be conscious of the time and the energy that you invest with anyone or anything. And this is true. You have the same 24 hours as everyone else. But what happens if in the future they decide to, oh, I don't know, control somehow those 24 hours? You see, already the average American adult spends at least 6 hours online staring at their phone. That's a quarter of their day gone, a fourth of their day gone. Hopefully they're sleeping. You see this control. I've talked about it before, the idea of a renewable society. This is why they want to put everything solar, everything, and on the surface, it sounds fantastic. I would love to see what it looks like in the future if it's actually able to be pulled off. I just understand how this whole globalism thing is going to be, how it's going to work, what they're trying to do, and things of this nature. You see, but we don't really talk about that. Nope. We need to be upset about that MAGA hat kid. You know, he shouldn't have been smirking. Whoa, he shouldn't have been smirking. And you see, this is the manipulation that we have to fight every day, that people don't really take the time to truly understand or to go back and think about. And that's why we have to remain vigilant in everything that we do. Now, one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about that I didn't get around, actually, you know what? Here, let me play for you guys this clip, because this is a part of climate change, Agenda 21, the Green New Deal, the United Nations, the global government, all of it. We saw that happen towards the end of 2018 with the UN Migration Pact, where they decided to criticize it, or where they criminalized the idea of talking about migration consider calling it hate speech, you see, but making it also a legal right for people to migrate wherever they want. This is a part of the Green New Deal. It has to do with resources, it has to do with migration, equality, and everything else. You see, and I've spoken on this before. They would like to level everyone. This is why you hear people at Davos, at the World Economic Forum, saying that they would like to control or fix the global poverty. Oh no! While they have their caviar and their fine aged wine, how can we help the poor? We're just so worried about the poor and what they're doing. Just what they're worried about is how they get rid of us. This is why they're coming through with robots and automation, because this is another thing that they don't really tell you about. It comes with the Green New Deal. People survive off of $5 basically a day, if that. So you want to talk about global inequality? People like it would take more than this episode and this segment to really try to break all this type of stuff down. That's why we're legitimately talking about, as I've said before, the socio-economic reformation. So many factors are involved in this, and that's why you see such a radical overhaul taking place. But what I'm going to do is play for you guys this quick clip of how a new caravan with hundreds of migrants are departing from Honduras to the U.S. And you got to think, when people, and they're doing, this is how the immigration process is working right now. Even in Mexico, they're saying, we're going to give you a visa for a month, and once you have that visa, you can go through here, but if we catch you after that month, you're going to send you right back. So you now have Mexico complicit with letting people into our border. And people are getting through. I mean, I think it was on Christmas Day. I remember reporting on it. I'm not sure if I did I think that might have been last season. But on Christmas Day, they let through all of the migrants. They released them. And they're still releasing people here in New Mexico and in Texas. It's crazy. So here you have a new caravan from Honduras trying to get to America. That's what's up. Well, I hope we will monitor this and see what happens with it. My whole thing is like, if America is so bad, why are all these people trying to come here? And I don't want to sound like a typical, I guess, a stupid American or something like that. It's because people understand that we have like some semblance of hope and dreams up here. That we try to promise a better tomorrow. The Democrats and the left will have you saying, oh, it's free everything, and the Republicans on the right will say, oh, it's only free if you basically submit to the government, the small government that we want. I don't care about the left or the right or any of that type of stuff. It's because people wanted a better tomorrow. It's because even the last little bits of what we think of we have for freedom is so much better than what everybody else has out there right now. And that's why we have to fight for it. I've said this before. Our kids are not only are they going to not know the internet the way that we do, but they're not going to know the world as we did. Clear blue skies, clean water, being able just to step outside and absorb the sun. If Bill Gates has his ways, he'll be able to reflect the sunlight's energy. Look, you see, that's why it's so much. And these people coming from these third world countries, I can't hate them. They want a better life, not only for themselves, but for their kids. And they're trying to do everything within their power to come to it. You got to think, for us, America is their Switzerland. America is They're Greenland. They're place where it's neutral, it's perfect, it's awesome, everything is awesome. But they don't see what's going on in here, and they're being weaponized, they're being used, and I think that's very, very messed up. It's distorted. But these are the types of things that we need to discuss so we have a unilateral understanding of what's happening. This is what I mean by them trying to reform the world. They don't want American exceptionalism. They want to use the idea of American exceptionalism to bring it down, as you see them doing in France, Europe, Africa, for sure, and everywhere else. They don't want us to have a belief in oneself. They don't want us to have any kind of semblance of pride or strength. But I tell you what, I think that's kind of backfiring. They're trying to reform the world, but I'll tell you what, people are standing up. And what's going to happen is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about France, the Yellow Vest protest, how it's going global, and what that means. The concept of criminalizing contemplation. They're trying to jail journalists, but it's not working. You know, people are standing up, and they won't. There's only so far you can push a person before they decide to retaliate. But like I said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the Yellow Vest protests, Facebook, their censorship being a strategic mouthpiece for the globalists, as well as my speech from the United for Common Ground Summit. That and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is the Season 8 debut of Factions of Freedom, and we'll be right back right after this. Salutations, my friends. I'm here to talk to you about, that's right, CBD oil. CBD oil can reduce the risk of relapse among alcohol and cocaine addicts, and you know they're trying to flood us with both. According to a 2013 study published in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, CBD was proven to have these benefits: relieving pain and inflammation, having antipsychotic effects, reducing anxiety, helping to fight cancer, relieving nausea, treating seizures, lowering incidences of diabetes, and also promoting cardiovascular health. Realized that in 2014, Purdue Pharma received FDA approval for an opioid drug that claimed to help curb the opioid addiction. This will actually help you curb your usage of opioids as well as your reliance upon them. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant. Expose lies and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out. That's me if I was arriving in like a future car. I don't know. Future Tesla. We're back. That's right. Maybe we should start getting like cool sound effects and other cool things to come back in on the breaks with, because I like doing it. I think it's kind of fun. People have told me, man, that stuff's silly, but it really does kind of help, you know, get the groove growing. It's very, you know, I hope you guys missed me. I missed you. You know, as I said before, the Instagram lives, those are one thing. Fellowship and freedom, you get a whole different version of me. But I hope you good folks on the main transmission missed me, because this type of being able to put out this type of work, personally, not only is it therapeutic, but it really does help kind of archive and catalog things, really put it into perspective. We've grown to get to this point. That's why clearly, it's season 8. And I wanted to say this at the start of the show as well, but, Jackrabbit me can't really ever think about that. This is why I offer season 1 for free, so people can hear everything, basically so people can hear the growth. I'm here for you, and all the work that we're doing is just that. Messages. It is ridiculous. Never have a quiet moment doing this. I'm here for you guys. Guys, gals, this is what we're doing. As I've said before, time and time again, how much of a blessing and an honor is it to be involved in people's life this way, and to be able to take change in what you see happening. You see, we have a lot of different types of things to discuss in this edition, and with that being said, thank you for tuning in. So before we were going into break, I was talking about how people are standing up, people are fighting back against this authoritarian takeover, this conformity, this austerity conformity. They're fighting back with creativity, with compassion, understanding, renaissance. Yes, it's glorious. It is a glorious thing. It truly is. I think so. And because you have this clamping down, right? All that's really doing is accelerating things. It's telling people, that this is something serious. This is something I need to fight for. This is something I need to believe in. This is there's more to this. We are now going on week 11 of the Yellow Vest protests in France. And now they're giving journalists 6 months in prison for organizing Yellow Vest protests on Facebook. And we're going to speak about that, organizing stuff on Facebook, and how it's clear that they are, as I said before, a mouthpiece for the globalist, a mouthpiece for the technocracy, a mouthpiece for the New World Order. It is becoming increasingly obvious and dangerous to operate on Facebook, as well as Instagram. I think we're going to see the rise of the censorship with that this year, for sure. You already have Bill Gates and Microsoft creating things like NewsGuard. We'll get into that as well, because these are all important. But my point is this: people are recognizing there's this claw, this thing that's trying to just control man and oppress us. They say it's the patriarchy, but that's to get man and women against one another. But it's larger than that. And I said this, I said this on the Instagram Live the other day. This is why we should just start saving those things. I got to figure out a place to put those, because it's becoming its own separate thing. But people are aware of the Zionists, the fake Jews, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the technocrats, the Satanists, the Luciferians. They're aware of all these people, right? But at the end of the day, the 1%, right? At the top of the pyramid, right? Who do these people serve, though? Who do the 1% serve? It's the devil. So that's when you follow the money, money's not real. It's what the money represents and what they do with the money and the power. Who's trying to control life? Who's trying to control what is natural? Something to contemplate. But we're going to get into this article from Elias Marat of the Mind Unleash. It says journalists given 6 months in prison for organizing Yellow Vest protest on Facebook. We put this up January 18th. It says as the Yellow Vests gear up for their 10th consecutive week of protests, dubbed Act 10, they're at Act 11 now, by the grassroots social movement. President Emmanuel Macron's government appears to be raising the stakes of repression in an attempt to quell protests and chill French constitutional guarantees of free speech. Such appeared to be the case after 28-year-old Frenchman journalist and movement leader Heidi Martin was sentenced last week to 6 months imprisonment after publishing a Facebook event calling for the Yellow Vest, or the Gilets Jaunes, described as possessing a, quote, certain notoriety by the president of the criminal court of Narbonne. Martin was arrested on January 3rd in Port La Nouvelle, one day after calling for protesters to blockade the coastal town's oil refinery and, quote, stand up to the CRS, the French acronym for the National Police. The punitive move appears to attend to silence the popular dialogue surrounding the protest movement, which has already chalked up an impressive set of achievements while continuing to mobilize in the face of stepped-up police state tactics, including the deployment of live ammunition-equipped semi-automatics, Heckler and Koch G35 rifles. Basically, they've deployed live ammunition on the French people. And this is a question I kind of want to pose to the audience. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. We see this kind of rise, as I said before, in authoritarianism and corporatocracy, basically, where you have corporations that have more power than almost some governments. It's like they're like super states. You see they're superseding over government, and they're just going straight to things like global control. We're going to see the rise of corporations having as much power as like the United Nations here in the future. But let me get back into this article. According to the WSWS Tribunal President Felipe Romanello lambasted the young organizers for his Facebook Live videos depicting his protest activities, quoting his posts calling for French people to protest the brutal and heavy-handed tactics of the National Police, which has included excessive use of tear gas, flashball munitions, stun grenades, and aggressive kettling tactics. The judge denounced the working-class activists for giving, quote, the impression that you were the center of information. While the 6-month sentence handed down last Tuesday is draconian, state prosecutor Marie-Agnes Jolet has actually demanded a 2-year prison sentence along with a 3-year ban from public protest activity, while also conceding that his activity in and of itself did not constitute a violent criminal act. Quote, it's not a matter of blaming him for carrying out an act, but the participation of a violent movement. They're basically trying to say that the French people, that the yellow vests are becoming, they're becoming violent, that they're becoming Antifa, that they're becoming provocateurs. They're not becoming any of these types of things. These are people, grassroots activists who are genuinely upset with things that are going on. They want to reform everything. They don't want to submit to globalist propaganda, globalist tyranny. And you know what the response of Emmanuel Macron is to his people when they want to legally and lawfully organize to express their displeasement with the system? Criminalizing protests. Victims. You're all suspects. You're all skeptical. You're all criminals. You're all part of a violent movement. Violent. And this is where we get more of this toxic masculinity, this idea that standing up for yourself is a bad thing. You should just bend over. You should just be subservient. You see. So after France begins criminalizing protests, after the Yellow Vest success, they begin jailing journalists for organizing on Facebook, trying to get together and doing these types of things. This is why, and this is another thing that we had discussed at the United for Common Ground Summit, how Facebook cannot be the place where you're trying to get your news. Okay, I think, as I said before, it's becoming increasingly obvious that they are essentially it's too simple to say the enemy. You see, it's much more than that. They will be the standard bearers. While it's fantastic that we see all these other alternative media platforms popping up, like Minds.com, Vero, Holonis, Steemit, BitChute, you see, Gab. It's great that we see all these other alternative media platforms growing, because Facebook will become the new CNN, the new Fox, the new ABC, the new MSNBC. You see, it's going to become the new everything. It's the consolidation. They're going to become the standard bearer. Facebook will become the strategic mouthpiece for the global elite. Every message that you need to get, that they need to get out there, they will use Facebook. You have got to understand that Facebook is not going to be the place where you get your news from. You don't want to do a whole lot of communicating on Facebook, because Facebook has become Big Brother, where they know everything about you. The other day at the gym, I was I was on the treadmill, and I was looking at how Fox News, because I run right there in the middle, there's this perfect piece of wood, you know, where it's just right there. I have Fox on the left, CNN on the right. Yeah, I think that's funny because, you know, they're opposite of one another. But, you know, over here I'm looking at Fox. They're talking about how 87 million people have been hacked on Facebook, and this is a very real thing. But over here on the right, CNN's talking to me about Applebee's and, you know, shrimp linguine and all these other things. They're talking about how Facebook's going to have to pay a record FTC fine for how many different people have been compromised. And this is after the Cambridge Analytica scam, after all kinds of different things, how we're finding out the third-party apps have access to your information, and so much more. This is mainstream news. And there are articles coming out today about predictive analysis, pattern recognition, and all these things. They have access to this because of Facebook. You see, and I've talked about this, Google has this thing called the selfish ledger. Imagine a spider plot node of your life, of everything that you do on Facebook, everything you like, and everything you share, everything you comment, how long you comment. These people, they have this stuff down to a science. And when you're using Facebook, you're essentially engaging in the big brother absorption of information. If Facebook and Instagram and social media, if they are only 5% of the known internet, what is that other 95 that you see? We're basically going through the internet with a phone and trying to capture it real quick, trying to capture life. There's so much more on the net, on the world out there, that it's crazy. But because we're operating inside of these platforms and these lenses, we can't really contemplate or even conceive anything outside of that. Very, very interesting, the kind of social engineering they have us under. But let me get into this article. It's very lengthy. I would tell you guys to go look at it and read it, because it's very, very important. But it's basically talking about everything I said here. This is by Richard Enos. It's from Collective Evolution. We put this up January 29th or January 21st. It says it's not clear whether Facebook was truly conceived by an innocent genius with noble intent, but one fact has become abundantly clear. Facebook is now the mouthpiece and tool for the proliferation of mainstream perception. This is specifically designed to enrich the global elite and to continue to disenfranchise ordinary citizens and any attempts to bring important truths to the light of the world that threaten the elites. And of course, Mark Zuckerberg is now a junior partner in this global elite. The episode of the Jimmy Dore Show, which is worth watching to get full context of the discussion, introduces whistleblower Freikam Kremar, a former promoter of the third-party videos on Facebook. Dore brings interesting insights into Facebook's latest strategies in terms of controlling the news commentary. He explains how Facebook is proliferating the establishment's narrative while limiting and blocking alternative voices, which, of course, Facebook characterizes as fake news. Here, Kumar discusses Mark Zuckerberg's testimony in Congress to this effect. Back in 2017, there was that TechCrunch report that said Facebook was taking measures to stop the spread of fake news by banning certain political accounts for promoting their videos on their newsfeed. So when I heard Mark Zuckerberg in 2018 telling Congress that he would be doing the same thing, I thought, what changed between 2017 and 2018? Are they taking new measures? Are they retaking the measures? And it wasn't until a week later that I realized that the Variety magazine reported that Facebook Watch, which is Facebook's media platform, had reached a multi-million-dollar deal with CNN, Fox News, ABC, and large media outlets. The congressional testimony was the perfect opportunity for the political establishment, the media establishment, and the tech companies to form an alliance against small media outlets. So let me go ahead and write that down if you guys didn't. Political, okay? Media, okay? And tech, all coming together under the guise of Facebook. Anderson Cooper, I'm not sure if you guys remember, but Anderson Cooper, this is, I think, their trial run on it. He did like a quick show where he was trying to report live. You know, he tried to do it naturally, you know, like kind of like how we're doing now with Instagram Live, where he's like on the spot, because they know these people are true fake news. They use all kinds of graphics and green screens and, you know, cuts and takes, and they do all kinds of media manipulation. So he tried to have an original broadcast, and it under-delivered. And so during that time frame, they realized, like, wow, okay, so we can't get as many people as we want to watch this. How do we force this to them? This is where you have the takedown of, the Free Thought Project, the anti-media, Minds Unleashed, Collective Evolution. All of these people who could garner real attention without even trying, because they're providing the people with what they want, not force feeding them information. And this is why, as I said before, Facebook is increasingly becoming Big Brother. They will tell you what you can and cannot hear, what you can and cannot say. That's why I'm sure your Facebook was lit up, if you still use Facebook, or your Instagram, it's the same mentality, different groups of people, or your Twitter, social media in general. I'm sure it's been lit up with just videos of that kid with the red hat and that guy with the Native American drum. You see, but I'm sure we're still not talking about the Yellow Vest protests. You see, and I think I should point that out as well. We have this major stuff going on. We were hoping that we would have the Yellow Vest protests hit here in America, but because they have this ability to manipulate your thought and control your consent, you don't think about the Yellow Vest protests. You don't want change. You don't want revolution. You want someone else to do that for you. And this is why we are in the situation we are in. But what's going to happen is I'm going to play for you guys a quick clip of something that I found very strange. It kind of illustrates where we're at, or at least just how how wild things are becoming. If you want to talk about criminalizing contemplation, the idea of them being able to manipulate our thoughts, manipulate our emotions, just simply through the flicker rates on the televisions, or even through what you see via social media. Well, check this out.
Focus One is the world's first wearable device specifically designed to detect and analyze users' attention levels. With proprietary hardware and an algorithm based on a formula developed at NASA, Focus One accurately translates brain signals into attention level. Focus One was co-developed by scientists from Harvard's Center of Brain Science and the Graduate School of Education. Focus One aims to break the traditional classroom mold and help schools use the most advanced technology available to conveniently reach their goals of improving the teaching and learning experience. In a traditional classroom, it can be challenging for teachers to easily understand their students' comprehension of the material. It can also be difficult to have insight into what teaching methods are most effective at engaging their class. Additionally, students can feel frustrated when they are not engaged and perform poorly. Now, let's see what a class with Focus One looks like. When students use the Focus One, teachers can immediately tell when their students are in a low attention state or high attention state. With Focus One, teachers are notified if real-time classroom average attention level drops too low. They can then re-engage their students. When students are in group discussions or working on team projects, teachers can easily observe all of their students' attention levels from one place. With this information, they can give individualized attention to those who need it most. With Focus One, teachers can engage in systematic reflection of their teaching by utilizing the Classroom Attention Level Report. Focus One offers teachers an opportunity to discover what works and what doesn't in their classrooms.
So I'm going to go ahead and put a pause on that right there. Basically what they're talking about is being able to control your child's brain and by monitoring their brain waves. What's going to happen is you're going to send little Jimmy to a school, right? You're going to think he's getting an education, and he's going to get an indoctrination, an inculcation into a system where he's taught to obey. Give over your thoughts, Jimmy, because you're supposed to be acting like everybody else. This is what I mean by the collectivism. Everybody in this classroom has headbands on. It's like the social credit score for your brain. Are you paying attention, little Jimmy? Are you focused? You see? This is what it sounds wild. It sounds crazy. But they're going to develop this in the future, and it's going to become more prevalent. The idea, as I said before, is to control your thoughts. You still have to think while it's legal. But what's going to happen, as I said before, is this kind of herd mentality, to where everybody has the headband on. Everybody's got to have the same kind of brainwave pattern. Everybody's got to be on the same page. No place for civil discourse where you can actually discuss a wide variety of ideas and different opinions. No, little Jimmy, you better pay attention. We're going to redefine education. You're going to have this headband on, and this is what will be even more strange in the future, if you ask me, as if they're able to send little shocks or some kind of pulse in your brain that basically disrupts your thinking or corrects it. Basically electroshock therapy using these types of bands. And this is, again, what they're doing for the future. This was made in America, but it's going to be deployed in China. They're basically giving China mind-reading technology through this and allowing it to be tested on children. This is after they came out with smart uniforms to track kids. This is the technocracy. How we have to have something in place in the future to where we can protect our thoughts, to where our thoughts should not be invaded or read. And I know that sounds wild, but hey, man, we are already at a point to where fake news, air quotes, is just a label that they're able to toss around for opinions that they don't necessarily agree with. You see, and this is the insanity that we have to fight, because it's not even just for now. It's for in the future. It's for what's coming down the line. Now, to end this segment, I want to play for you guys that haven't had the time to check out our speech from the United for Common Ground summit that we went out to Houston, Texas for. Fantastic time meeting so many amazing and like-minded people. I did a mini cast where I tried to break it down and tell you guys what was kind of discussed, the themes that were discussed there. If anything, I'll try to put that link in the description bar below so you guys can check it out. But it was such an honor being amongst some of the heavy hitters within alternative media and to be able to have that kind of fellowship and discuss these types of things. But for people who haven't checked out our speech just yet, I'm going to be playing it for you. Thank you for listening. I had a whole script typed up and ready to go, but I'm not going to use that. I like everything I'm hearing today, from alternative solutions to effective outcomes, to potentialities. I like what I'm hearing. I kind of want to touch on what he said, the previous guest, or the previous speaker. I do think that we should use every single tool at our disposal. Starting out, I had all of my content on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, TuneIn Radio, all these different places. And I think it's imperative that we use every single one of these resources. You have Vero, Halanis, Minds, Steemit, MeWe, Gab. You have all these other amazing alternative media platforms spawning because the Tower of Babel Facebook is exploding. This is a momentous moment. MySpace is gone. Facebook is dying. This allows for us to effectively find the next alternative. I was told that we have the creator of Minds here. I think that's a fantastic alternative to Facebook, but that's not the only thing that we need. We need an alternative to Twitter. We need an alternative to YouTube. Right to Yawn or Real.video as made by Mike Adams of Natural News. We need to invade all these platforms. I operate primarily on Instagram. I know this year I will be taken off. If not, thank you. But that's not going to stop me from doing everything I can to diversify the message that people need to get the content. And what I mean by that is getting a newsletter, a weekly podcast, both video and audio. And this is just what I'm doing. I don't have like a solution for everybody. I'm just trying to talk about how I'm taking the shotgun approach and trying to do as much as I can to make sure people get the information. And I think that's what we're supposed to do. I think people want like a set in stone solution, and that's not what's going to happen. We're in a fight. We're in a war on consciousness. Every single one of us here knows this, and that's why we can't find like a definite solution, because we're having to innovate, we're having to adjust, we're having to adapt, we're having to overcome every single obstacle that comes at us. And that's what I'm saying. I like what I'm hearing here. We have so many heavy hitters; it's crazy to think about. But I don't want to go down that path. My point is this: we are making history. We are changing things, but we are changing how people speak and act by having these kinds of meetings, summits, where we come together and show this kind of solidarity and unity. That scares a lot of people who don't know how to think for themselves, and I'm sure you're all very well aware of that. As independent thinkers, and people who are conscious about what's going on, we have a generational obligation and a generational duty to transcend our current circumstances. These censorship, we're get used to it. It's not going away. What will affect this is our approach towards it, and this right here is an effective approach towards it. There's nothing I can say other than thank you for having me on. I see that we have a chart which displays how many, how 6 corporations own the media. None of us own anything. We're powered by the people. Like, that's why we do this. That's why I do what I do. I can't think of anything else to do other than being here for people. I wouldn't want to submit myself to anything else. Like, this is our reality. And so we are already doing more by simply showing up and stepping into the fight. That's all I really have. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you to Jason and Derek for putting this amazing event on. I can't wait to be here with you guys again. And I'm very excited to see what we do. It's my little tagline that I say on my podcast. Expose lies and share truth. Stay vigilant, gang. It's true, because I do say stay vigilant. I don't say stay vigilant, gang, but I do say stay vigilant to people. It's true, I do say that on my podcast. That's where we're at right now. Sorry for the audio volume quality. I wish it could have been better, but you know, we're learning as we go. If you guys want, you can listen to that on your phone. I'll put that link in the description bar below. And as you guys saw, Jason Bassler of the Free Thought Project, the co-founder of the Free Thought Project, came up after, and him and Derek Bros, they put on a fantastic summit. I'm going to be trying to have on a lot of the people that we had there, or that I met with, that we discussed and talked with. I'm going to be trying to have them on both this show and Fellowship and Freedom, hopefully throughout the year. I met a lot of people, and it's going to be hard trying to cram them in there. But this is what I'm trying to talk about. We are in a war on your consciousness, a war against you. You've got to figure out a way to liberate yourself. And part of being what I would consider a free thinker, a truth seeker, a conscious individual, somebody who is just against this type of stuff, we have got to remain vigilant. We can't fall prey to groupthink. That's what I'm saying. You know, prior to going to the event, I felt like it was like the Justice League. Everybody that had their own various battles that they were fighting, all united underneath this whole idea that we need to still operate. We need to figure out a way to get the content out there to people, to our audience, because they're all diverse, and we need to unify so that people see that kind of solidarity. Very, very powerful moment. I wish I could have effectively shared it with you guys, because that's what this is about. That's all I'm here to do, is to help innovate and grow through this. And that's all I'm here to do. But what's going to happen is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about our image of man. We see this whole traditional masculinity, toxic masculinity, the obvious gender bending and fluidity, the manipulation of humanity. This is the big trend that's going to extend far past 2019, and I think a lot of people can see that. We're going to be talking about this, Uncle Sam wanting your DNA, and more on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction of Factions of Freedom, and we'll be right back right after this. Yeah, it's crazy. You know, it's crazy doing this because I don't really feel like I don't feel like I took a break because I'm still engaged. I'm still aware of everything that's going on. I can see what happened in such a short amount of time, and I feel like so much can happen to an individual in such a short amount of time that it's crazy. Like I feel like I've grown and matured, and it becomes like all kinds of different types of sophisticated, and this type of work, it's just different. And being able to take a break for 2 seconds in this instant gratification world, in this 24-hour society, you know, being able to take a break and tune out, you know, it is wild to think about. You know, the audience that we have, the content that we're covering, what we have in store for people, how we're still trying to do more, the people that we have interacted with. Oh, and it's only going to get better because of your guys' amazing support, for one, and because, you know, we live in such an amazing time period. Everything that we talk about here, yeah, it's very real, it's very strange, very crazy, very chaotic, but all that should illustrate to a lot of people is the times that we're in, the blessings that we have, the gifts that are going to be bestowed upon us. I truly feel like, you know, and I had spoken on this. I'll speak about this, and then I'll jump into the content. You know, I was speaking about this, how the drugs and the proliferation of them in society, how they're just like dumbing everybody down, how people are just becoming, you know, brain dead. They're done, you know. They're just, and how we program ourselves and stuff like this. Just it's interesting these days we're in. I constantly think about that scene in The Matrix where Neo's just laying down on the bed, and then he has that basically USB stick or Elon Musk's Neuralink injected into his brain, and then he learns Kung Fu. People can learn Kung Fu like that, you know. But you know, this is how I think of information, just being able to try to learn as much as possible. You would think that's the point of this, but how does it connect with, you know, just how people are, I guess, just staying addicted to the drugs? You know, there are higher states of consciousness. As I said before, we live in an amazing time period right now. The Spirit of God is being like poured out on people, and that's a lot of energy, and that's a lot of blessings. That's a lot of synchronicity. That's a lot of multidimensional affirmations for a lot of people who don't know how to wield that type of energy. You heard me talk about this towards the end of 2018 with a lot of the guests. Is how do we wield this power of righteousness? You know, we've been so disenfranchised for so long. We don't know how to empower one another and enlighten one another, encourage one another, have this righteous indignation and build something with it. We've lost that sense. But we for sure know how to tear somebody down. I for sure know how to talk smack. I for sure know how to tell somebody they'll never be as amazing as me. You will never amount to anything. We never know how to say, hey man, you are fantastic. You are a child of God. We don't know how to encourage people. And so this is something, and I probably should have put this in the show notes. I didn't mean to say this or get into this point, but this is why I'm launching Liberation Legion, so people understand their powers and their gifts and their abilities. Maybe that's where I should start doing more of these Instagram lives, is on Liberation Legion, so people can get that sense of me rather than Freedom Faction. People want to talk conspiracies on Freedom Faction. We need to talk solutions and how to live in this alternative lifestyle to where we seize the power of righteousness and all of its gifts, because the devil is running a lot of game right now on a lot of people. And he's just having a field day. He's like, hey man, you want some Percocets? Hey man, you want some cocaine? Hey man, you want some MDMA? I bet you want them shrooms. I bet you want all this stuff. I bet you want some chemicals. Ho, ho, ho. And the Bible speaks about this, the pharmakeia, the sorcery. That's why you can't ever pronounce any of the dang names of the pharmaceuticals they're trying to shove down children's throats. You know, and this ties into everything we're going to be talking about. You know, I guess I'm talking about the psychological effects and how it's always messed with us. I've spoken about this time and time again. This is why I'm staunchly against any kind of pharmaceutical, because it messes up your it messes up your receiving of signals. Everything I'm doing right now is based off of the cosmic signals I receive from God, the universe, however you want to interpret it. But how can you receive these signals if you're all doped up? How can you receive these signals if you're slowed down, if you're chopped and screwed, if you're turned off lean? You see? Oh, but you're raising your consciousness by hippie flipping. You're not raising your consciousness. Your brain's having like an overload. So, and maybe this is what I'll do too. I'll start having more people on to where we can really have this kind of psychedelic discussion in this multidimensional thing. Because while I'm a very spiritual person, multidimensional I think is a whole nother thing. And so is religion. And these are all things I think a lot of people have missed in this instant gratification society. We think we know it all. That is beyond arrogance. That is beyond pride. We think because, oh, I saw it on YouTube or I saw it on Google. You saw what? You didn't see anything. You saw what you were supposed to see. You were allowed to see this much. We don't understand a lot, okay? People spend, like I said before, a quarter of their day on the phone. They're not reading books. They're swiping. Okay, so there's a lot of things that I think we just need to look at, and I kind of want to focus on for this season to kind of get people back to point and center. Because knowledge of self is a powerful thing. It's dangerous to our adversaries, those that would like to keep you subservient. But it's a powerful thing to people who would like to liberate themselves and others, and that's all we're here to do. So let's jump into this segment. Stop all the ranting, right? I told you that we were going to be getting into things like the obvious gender bending and fluidity. I'm out here in New Mexico. And so recently we had this transgender man, woman, ma'am, oh, my bad, macho ma'am, tranny savage. We had a transgender woman in a GameStop here in Albuquerque make national news for basically freaking out and being called, or as she says, maliciously misgendered. And this is something that we're going to start seeing more. You want to talk about toxic masculinity? How come we're not talking about this? You know, I had this revelation, you know, before I actually came onto the show. Is you know, people, they say, you know, people stop growing up around, like, people stop growing up. You know, with the telomeres, you start aging faster. You know, your body shrivels up. There's a lot of factors that that we need to look at when we talk about this transgender stuff and how actually dangerous it is. You're giving people who have gone their entire life, developed all kinds of mannerisms, triggers, psychological habits, however you want to look at it. They've gone their entire life acting one way, and now we're giving them all kinds of different hormone treatments, all kinds of different medicines, medications, therapies, and everything else to basically say, that's not okay, think this way. So you're basically dealing with people who unfortunately are mentally unstable, and this is why they have those delicate sensibilities. And we're being told we're not supposed to say anything about this. And I've spoken about this time and time again whenever we touch on this topic. These people legitimately need help. And I don't think encouraging the psychosis is necessarily the solution. But what do I know? So I'm going to play for you guys KOB TV having on this transgender woman, and where she says, you know, she would do it all over again. I didn't even know this, but this lady was a rapper here, locally. So I'm going to play for you guys a clip, and then we'll get into it right after this.
Ma'am, once again, ma'am. I said both of you. No, you said sir. Once again, it's ma'am.
Well, this video from right here in New Mexico is going viral online. A transgender woman losing her cool when she says an employee at an Albuquerque video game store called her sir instead of ma'am. The video has been viewed more than 1 million times on YouTube over the last 2 weeks, and it's getting people talking. Lots of people have made fun of the woman for her outburst. Others say she did the right thing by defending her gender identity. Now only on 4, she's telling her side of the story to Kai Porter.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am.
It's the video seen by millions. Tiffany Moore, a transgender woman who recently started her transition, yelling at an employee inside this Albuquerque GameStop. Moore says the cashier repeatedly called her sir instead of the gender pronoun she identifies with. While she was trying to return a game she bought for her son.
Ma'am, once again, ma'am.
I said both of you.
No, you said sir. Once again, it's ma'am.
I actually said both of you guys.
Right beforehand, you f***ing said sir.
Sir? Okay.
Take it outside. If you want to call me sir again, I will show you a f***ing sir.
I apologize. I apologize now.
I was so angry at that point because literally 5 or 6 times he called me sir and got me so human angry and I was cussing that.
The internet responding to the viral clip with memes like Superman, Aquaman, and Macho Man, Tranny Savage. Tranny is a slang term for transgender that many find offensive and derogatory.
What's really sad is it's bringing so many bigots out of the woodwork.
But Moore, a local MC and rapper, isn't letting the memes get to her. She's using her newfound viral fame to raise awareness about the transgender community, and she even wrote a song to get her message out there.
We're humans just like you. We're people just like you. We have kids, we have parents, we have brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins. We're just trying to live.
Yeah, my apologies.
As for how Moore handled the situation inside the store with that expletive-filled outburst,
yeah, I could have reacted a whole lot better. But you know what? I look back at it, if I could, I wouldn't change a single thing. I would do it 100,000 times again. I would kick over that display 100,000 times again because my actions were justified. I mean, it was blatant and malicious hate. It was blatant and malicious misgendering.
And we reached out to GameStop's corporate office for a statement. We'll let you know when we hear back. Kai Porter, KOB, Eyewitness News.
Thanks, Kai. So instead of boycotting GameStop, I'm actually going to go in there, I think, January 28th. Or I'm just going to go ahead and buy Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm not going to boycott GameStop because of this. Are you serious? No, man. I've been waiting for Kingdom Hearts forever. So, Macho Man, Tranny Savage, I'm sorry, Tiffany Moore, but how are we supposed to know? How are we supposed to know what you want to be labeled as? You see, that's why I talked about this a lot last season. This idea of legalizing lunacy. How are we supposed to know what this person wants to be known or called or whatever? You know, I'm out here in New Mexico. Santa Fe is where we have a lot of the hipster people, and you know, there's a lot of guys that like to dress as girls and girls that like to dress as guys. So, you know, somebody comes into GameStop, we're just going to talk to you the way that we think you're dressed as, man. And so it's very, very crazy to see that kind of psychosis being blown out there. And then if you guys watch the full video, Tiffany Moore says at the end, after punching, you know, the stand, you know, I'm going to get on the internet and I'm going to tell the whole LGBTQP community about you. Because that's their intention. That's their only weapon at the moment, is rage, outrage, victimization. You heard the kid there. He said, I'm sorry, trying to apologize, trying not to upset this person who is obviously increasing in rage. This person saying, look, I'm sorry, I didn't know. He says, look, I'm sorry, ma'am. And because they're already in this state of emotional triggering, they don't want to be pacified. You see, so it really is like a dominance thing. It's like a mental, emotional dominance type of thing. But again, they don't talk about that type of toxic masculinity. And because Tiffany Moore is now Tiffany Moore, you know, they let that slide. He is now she. That's not toxic. You see. And now you have Gillette, because this is the next ad I'm going to play for you guys. You now have Gillette saying that masculinity is toxic. Boys will be boys is apparently a bad thing. Let's take a listen.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get?
Shows kids chasing.
It's likely happening here in Bullying as well.
A problem. We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy? What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
So that's what she says.
And there will be no going back. Because we
invest in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie. Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Not cool? Not cool?
Some already are. In ways big
His dad's got PTSD because he got chased as a kid.
and small.
I am strong.
But some is not enough.
It's not how we treat each other, okay?
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say something real quick. I remember being like in high school, right? It was either high school or middle school, I think. And, you know, one of the kids I went to school with, he beat up this kid. Then the dad came to school the next day, kid beat up the dad. You know? And so my whole thing watching this little commercial, the dad's hovering, people hovering, it's not how we treat each other, okay? You gotta let kids do stuff. And I don't have kids, but I'm thinking that with this constant hovering, this constant smothering, this constant politically correct parenting, you know, that's how we have a lot of the trinities we have today. That's why we have a lot of the parenting issues we have today. If we continue to let these corporations and all these other people, you know, teach you how to raise your kid, then you're gonna just be you're gonna be removed from the situation. They're already trying to say that parents don't control their kids. That's why they don't want to homeschool them. This toxic masculinity thing, what Gillette did, you know, it was they shot themselves in the foot. It backfired. But that's not enough. You see, they have to introduce this idea, and you're already hearing it. I didn't talk about it last season or last year so much because it's something that I've been watching. But sure enough, it's here. Traditional masculinity is a problem. And I've spoken on this. I'm not necessarily sure which. I don't know if I did a mini cast on it, but I talked about this, and I'm going to play for you guys another clip where PETA says traditional masculinity is dead, and how they need to, how you get sexual virility from vegetables. I'm not kidding. But check this out. We put this up January 9th. It's by Ricky Scaparo of End Times Headlines. It says the American Psychological Association claims traditional masculinity is harmful and could lead to sexual harassment. Now, I will not deny that rape does exist. I was watching Beowulf the other night, and I just saw the programming take place right there. And there's, you know, rape does exist for sure. And unfortunately, and I have friends that, you know, are children of rape. But I think to only attribute it to that is dangerous when you don't necessarily look at like what masculinity is. And I think, and I talked about this a lot towards the end of the season last year. I have to do a video on the divine feminine and the sacred masculine. There truly is something there. But what we are being told is one is being criminalized while the other is being exalted. This is also a part of Agenda 21. It's part of their equality. This is why you see them saying the future is female. Destroy the patriarchy. We want equality. Basically, get rid of men. We want subservient weak cucks, beta males. We want a new masculinity that's more repressive. You see, let me get into this article. It says, it's all your fault, men. For the first time in its history, the American Psychological Association released guidelines concerning men and boys saying that so-called traditional masculinity not only is harmful, but also could lead to homophobia and sexual harassment. Quote, the main thrust of the subsequent research is that traditional masculinity, marked by stoicism, competitiveness, dominance, and aggression, is, on the whole, harmful. Read the news release by the famed association, quote, the main thrust. Think about that. The main thrust of the subsequent research is that traditional masculinity, stoicism, you know, where like a knight, stoicism, competitiveness, you know, like a football player, like a rugby player, like a soccer player, you know, dominance, like a anybody that does track and field, you know, aggression, you know, anybody that goes to like a concert, you know, that is whole and harmful. Okay, It notes that research shows traditional masculinity is psychologically harmful and that socializing boys to suppress their emotions causes damage that echoes both inwardly and outwardly. The 36-page document goes on to coin masculinity ideology, which stems from traditional masculinity and claims that it harms boys and men. Traditional masculinity ideology has been shown to limit male psychological development, constrain their behavior, result in gender role strain and gender role conflict, and negatively influence mental health and physical health, the report warns. The masculinity ideology is defined by the APA as, quote, a particular constellation of standards that have held sway over large segments of the population, including anti-femininity, achievement, eschewal, appearance of weakness, and adventure, risk, and violence. The research goes on to suggest that masculine boys may put their energy toward disruptive behaviors such as homophobia, bullying, and even sexual harassment rather than strive for academic success, so where they can be brainwashed. Basically, people that, go do what they want instead of being what they're told. Quote, though men benefit from patriarchy, they are also impinged upon patriarchy, said Donald F. Levant, a professor emeritus of psychology at the University of Akron and the co-editor of the APA volume. So think about that. Any of the qualities I just listed to you right there is toxic. Everything that Taylor Moore did, I would say is more toxic. I would say it's this manipulation of natural gender roles that are creating and highlighting more of these types of characteristics. Basically, what I'm trying to say is when you have politics and government telling you what the standard should be rather than the standard telling government and politics what it is, that's whenever we have a huge disconnect and a huge issue. And I think that's what we're dealing with right now. We have every kind of mainstream media outlet telling you one type of thing. As I discussed with Riza Islam and Freddie of Frevolution, we're dealing with a synthetic culture that's being impressed upon us. A lot of this stuff is not sustainable. Then on top of that, you have to understand that the sperm rates are dropping. They're taking away sports. They're taking away trophies. They're taking away everything that would give this kind of semblance of masculinity, this semblance of male energy, of patriarchy. And I don't think there's anything wrong with patriarchy, because I think, there's also matriarchs, man. There's been very, very powerful and influential women like Joan of Arc, who have led revolutions. Amelia Earhart. Don't even get me started on Queen Elizabeth. I think she's something else, but there are matriarchies out there and systems built upon it. But I think this whole when you think of Western expansion and Western ideology and rugged individualism, unfortunately, you don't necessarily think of like a very, very dainty boy. You don't think of a twig boy. You don't think of like a stick kid. You don't think of like an Antifa person, somebody that's got the skinny jeans, the skinny everything, the tall, fragile, near alien-like body. You don't think about that. You think of somebody that's got like this beard that's out there doing stuff. And so then, you have this thing where it's being perpetuated now. We're not allowed to say the truth. A lot of people don't want to fess up to the fact that they can be held accountable for their own actions, both happy and sad. Your freedom is dependent upon the choices that you make. As I said before, you have the same 24 hours every day. And if you have more time to criticize other people instead of appreciating them, well, then you might consider everybody else the problem and not your own actions. You see, we now live in a victim society to where you don't want to be a victor. If you're a victor, if you get put up there, you're going to be shot down by everybody that doesn't want to be exceptional, by everybody that doesn't want to be extraordinary. And I feel like that is something that goes across the board. How and again, because this is why I have to do a breakdown of the sacred masculine and the divine feminine. Men have feminine characteristics as well. That's how we know how to love. That's how we know how to care. We know how to show emotions. It's just not where we operate, because you need somebody that is going to be, as I say all the time, vigilant, so that we have things to protect. You can't protect things if you're looking for someone else to protect you. It's a natural response to look out for your fellow man, to look out for your fellow human beings. And these are natural, traditional masculinity like things. But because we raise kids on screens and they don't know what's going on, we can't really reach them. They have this idea of what masculinity is. They vicariously live through all these people who play, you know, Black Ops 3 or Call of Duty or For Honor. You know, they look back at all these times and they say, gosh, you know, I wish I could do that. You can. You can do weapons training. That's the beauty about the time frame that we're in. But it's actually being pushed upon us to become the victim. You get more attention for saying, oh, I can't do this, than you can for saying, check out what I can do, X, Y, and Z. You see. But in the future, and this is where these people would really like for all of this to go. They want to do away with gender. Check this out. Daughters come home with mustaches and breasts removed. Moms sound the alarm over a shocking new trend. So while they're saying traditional masculinity is bad, transgenderism is good, respect this type of stuff, they're now saying, hey, let's give these girls, let's give them some testosterone. You see how they take it to the extreme? You see, and that I think that's what's crazy. Is they're telling boys that they can have menstrual periods. They're giving girls mustaches. We're allowing transgender people to beat up things at GameStop. And yeah, that's normal. We're not talking about the bisphenol A. We're not talking about the atrazine. We're not talking about the gender-bending chemicals that are affecting people. We're just saying we have to be tolerant of this type of stuff. Don't even get me started on Desmond the Amazing. He's going to be, again, somebody you're going to see all throughout this year, I'm sure. There are pictures with him and some naked man, an 11-year-old boy and a naked man, taking pictures. There's videos of him with other drag queens talking about ketamine. Other videos where he's in a where he's in a room with two people, RuPaul and I forget the other gentleman's name, but you know he's an interesting character himself, and they have a Rohypnol picture in the back. Rohypnol being a date rape drug. And now he's talking, Desmond's the drag kid's coming out talking about how he wants to have a drag kid club. Like it's crazy. You see, and that's what I'm saying. They're putting it in these extremes. Let me read into this article and then I'll play for you guys that quick clip because it's ridiculous of traditional masculinity being dead by PETA. But this article we're going to be getting into, it's from End Times Headlines. It's by Ricky Scaparo. We put this up January 15th. It says, daughters come home with mustaches and breasts removed. Moms sound the alarm over shocking new trend. As society continues to evolve, and some critics might argue devolve, into a more progressive understanding of gender and sexuality, the stakes couldn't be higher. To the dismay of many parents, the societal tug-of-war over transgenderism is playing out on today's college campuses like never before and is hitting young women particularly hard. One mother, Catherine Cave, recently called attention to the issues, telling the College Fix, quote, I am writing you on behalf of parents who have lost their kids at college to the transgender craze. Quote, many liberal colleges have significant percentages of students subtly identifying as transgender, Cave writes. Quote, and as many of you as you may know, all it takes is a simple visit to an informed consent clinic where girls get testosterone injections to help them look like males. One such case involved a 19-year-old girl named Pam, who, according to her mother, quote, fits the typical description of a young woman affected by this craziness. Very bright, extreme social justice warrior, highly creative, socially awkward, ADHD, Asperger's spectrum, OCD, obsessive interests, all these types of things. While she was not a super girly girl, she had never any masculine interests, not one, and has all the stereotypical feminine interests and traits: cooking, knitting, babysitting, little kids, etc. Pam's mother explained, quote, she went from being a feminist pro-women's rights to hating white males to now wanting to become one and wanting to chemically and surgically mutilate her body. In yet another example of transmedia, the Wall Street Journal, Abigail Schreier shares the story of an attorney whose daughter left for college, a girly girl, only to return having undergone a shocking transformation. The young woman that went off to college, which began, as it often does these days, with the invitation to to state her name, sexual orientation, and pronouns. When her anxiety flared during her first semester, she and several of her other friends decided that their angst had a fashionable cause, quote, gender dysphoria, and within a year, the lawyer's daughter had begun a course of testosterone. So there you go. Traditional masculinity is toxic, so toxic that it has pro-feminists becoming males. Like, what? And this is, again, the psychosis that's being permeated throughout society. It's being legalized. And we're not talking about how the people that come that have these things happen, right? How they feel afterwards, and how they can't really get it back. They can't really, you know, they're not ever going to become the individual that they were before. There's a case right now. I think it's you guys might be able to type this in, but it's called UK's first transgender family. It's where the father became the mother became the mother became the father, and they're gonna have a son that's gonna become a daughter, you know, and it's all that, you know. And I said this before, these kids that go off to college and do this type of stuff, you know, they consented to this. They did this themselves to themselves. So they can't be held accountable, right? There's no one else's fault other than like the people who are promoting this type of trans mania. The kids, however, the children who were victims of this, the parents who signed those forms and turned Jimmy into Jenny, those are the ones that we need to hold accountable. Because maybe in the future, Jenny can become Jimmy, but currently at the time, with everything that's going on, and this is what's going on with the gender-bending chemicals, the gender X's, what's going on with gender, the fluidity, the sexuality, the biochemistry of humanity right now, and how it's just basically being thrown out of whack. This is their solution. Rather than talking about this growing epidemic, they're saying this is natural. This is not natural. If you have to take testosterone injections, have hormone treatment and all this other stuff, that's clearly not natural. And so this we're going to see this develop the same way we're going to see pedophilia develop as well. All of this stuff is crazy, but this is just so they can mess with gender, make it to where everything's immoral, nothing matters. But check this out and get ready for a laugh. I'm going to play this video of the people for ethical treatment of animals basically saying that you can get sexual virility through vegetables. They're saying that traditional masculinity is dead, and then they tweeted out this video, and let me tell you, it is definitely something interesting. So all I'm going to say is be prepared for some funky music in the background. And for our audio listeners, basically, you know, what's happening is they've attached vegetables to various men's genitalia, saying that you can increase your sexual virility by consuming vegetables. Look at this guy's face. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it right there, because basically it's too much even for me. You're just seeing, like I said before, increase your sexual stamina, have vegetables, do all this. Traditional masculinity is dead. And if you guys have been paying attention to some of the discussions that me and Charles Casson have been having regarding vegetables and all this other type of stuff, you know, it's very cautious to see these types of people pushing this stuff on us. That's all I'm saying. And there's an obvious agenda behind it, and I think people need to be aware of that. So to kind of start to wrap up this broadcast for you guys, I want to kind of touch on something real quick. You know, Dr. He Jiankui, the scientist behind the CRISPR babies, behind the genetically modified babies, they're saying that he's going to be punished. And on top of that, information has come out that his gene-edited babies are almost 12 to 14 weeks old. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is, while you see America over here working on things like, you know, as I said before, gender, sexuality, gender-bending things, chemicals like that, you have Chinese scientists editing the embryos of babies, making them disease and drug resistant, two types of things, to where they're basically trying to be perfect. This is the future that we're going to go into. And I think that's another thing that people have to be very cautious of, is while they say that this is what they're trying to do, you have to look at what's really happening in the background. You see gene therapies and things of this nature. That's going to become very important in the future, because you have people who are doing testosterone injections, hormone treatments, gene therapy, or not gene therapy, gender treatment, all these different types of things. And it sounds strange, but just think about what this is going to do in the future. How that, again, how this all affects your biochemistry. But like I said, I wanted to touch on the fact that China's second gene-edited fetus is about 12 to 14 weeks old, and how Professor Hian Jiku is actually facing execution for coming out and talking about this type of stuff. We've known for decades that they are doing designer babies, that they are biohacking, that they're doing and conducting this type of transhuman research. But now that you have a Chinese scientist coming out talking about these things, China's like, you better stop. But here we have Professor He Jiankui talking about his two gene-edited fetuses.
Two beautiful little Chinese girls named Lulu and Lala came crying into the world as healthy as any other babies a few weeks ago. The girls are home now with their mom, Grace, and dad, Mark. Grace started her pregnancy by regular IVF, with one difference. Right after we sent her husband's sperm into her egg, we also sent in a little bit of protein and instruction for a gene surgery. When Lulu and Lala was just a single cell, this surgery removed the doorway through which HIV entered to infect people. A few days later, before returning Lulu and Lala to Grace's womb, we checked how the gene surgery went by whole genome sequencing. The result is two beautiful.
So there you have it. He's clearly, obviously, very excited to tell you about Lulu and Lala, his gene-edited fetuses, and how he's trying to make them, as I said before, disease resistant. This is transhumanism. This is biohacking. You know, you have grinders, people who get the CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing tool, they get it and then they modify their own DNA. You know, and this is, again, something we need to pay attention to. Biology, DNA, eugenics, this is all where we're going. This is what I mean by our image of man. We're trying to create man in our image. We were made in the likeness of God. That's why we're creators. But now we're getting to the point to where we're like, well, let's create us. Let's modify us. Let's mess with our embryos. Let's have designer babies. I'm very cautious about this because, you know, they talk about that in the Bible. How all flesh was polluted, wicked, corrupted. They're pushing things like sterility. You know, and even in the Tower of Babel, they talk about how that whole thing, you know, is about dethroning God, reaching up into the heavens to dethrone God. And I truly believe, like, that's what we're seeing right now. These corporations, they feel like they have so much power. They're like, we know everything better than you. We're going to control it. And I want to leave it off with this, because this, I think, is imperative to what I have basically been talking about for a while now. And I remember seeing there are very specific articles, I guess, that stand out to me when I do this. They kind of set the mold for everything else that's going on. You know, and this is what pays attention to all this, because from here on out, things are going to get a lot crazy. People are going to start messing with their DNA, messing with their genes, biohacking, and doing all this type of stuff, becoming the transhumans. This is an article from Patriot Rising, but a lot of other alternative media outlets picked it up. Uncle Sam wants your DNA. It's the FBI's diabolical plan to create a nation of suspects. Now, this is a twofold thing I want to discuss with you guys real quick, because when I talked about this in the Billy and the Matrix documentary, I said how I think it's strange that the FBI went through and combined civilian and criminal fingerprint databases. Well, now they outdid that. That's not strange, EJ. This is strange. They want your DNA. They have mobile and portable DNA testing kits to where they can see, you know, if you're drunk, if you're high, if you're on pills or anything like that when you get pulled over. That's just what that's what law enforcement has, and they're gonna be able to do this. The twofold thing about this is for them to be able to notify people's mark people's DNA, for one, see where their genetic lineage is too. And this is, again, part of this eugenics, this society where if you don't have the right genes, you're not allowed to do certain things. And this is very, very, very slippery slope. Very, very slippery slope. But let me get into this article. We put this up January 23rd. It's from Patriot Rising. It says, quote, as more and more data flows from your body and brain to the smart machines via the biometric sensors, it will become easy for corporations and government agencies to know you, manipulate you, and make decisions on your behalf. Even more importantly, they could decipher the deep mechanisms of all bodies and brains and thereby gain the power to engineer life. If you want to prevent a small elite from monopolizing such godlike powers, and if we want to prevent humankind from splitting into biological castes, the key question is, who owns the data? Does the data about my DNA, my life, and my brain belong to me, to the government, or to a corporation, or to the human collective? This was said by Professor Yuval Noah Harari. Uncle Sam wants you. Correction, Uncle Sam wants your DNA. Actually, if the government gets its hands on your DNA, they as good as have you in their clutches. Get ready, folks, because the government, helped along by Congress, which adopted legislations allowing policy to collect and test DNA immediately following arrests. You can thank President Trump for that, who signed the Rapid DNA Act into law. The courts, which have ruled that the police can routinely take DNA samples from people who are arrested and not yet convicted of a crime, and local police agencies, which are chomping at the bit to acquire this new crime-fighting gadget, is embarking on a diabolical campaign to create a nation of suspects predicated on a massive national DNA database. As the New York Times reports, quote, the science fiction future in which police can swiftly identify robbers and murderers from discarded soda cans and cigarette butts has arrived. In 2018, President Trump signed into law the Rapid DNA Act, which, starting this year, will enable approved police booking stations in several states to connect their rapid DNA machines to CODIS, the national DNA database. Genetic fingerprinting is set to become as routine as the old-fashioned kind. So watch out on where you put everything. With this hyper-militarized state, this hyper-militarized government. Now, this article goes into depth about everything that I had mentioned before. I don't have the time to go into it. But your DNA is you. Your data is you. Your data is DNA. That's why you have a code, a genetic code. And they're trying to understand not only your genetic line, but humanity's genetic line. Humanity's understanding of things and how we're operating the way we are. Even today, prior to getting onto the show, I put up an article about how they have machines with predictive analysis, machines learning humanity. We're having to ask the questions now, are we living our life or are we already controlled by the AI? This is what I mean by that. There is, in the future, in the technocracy, normal humans cannot go there. It will be only the transhumans, only the people who adhere to the system. This is the beginning of 2019. We're talking about so much already. Wow. Predictive pre-crime, world-changing events, climate change, chemtrails, hacking children's brains, thought control, criminalizing protests, criminalizing basically thinking, criminalizing being human. I tell you, my friends, it feels like we're staring into the abyss, and the abyss is roaring back in us. And what we have to do, what we have to understand is that we have the power to expel all these things. And this slippery slope that we're on, it can only end whenever we decide to get off of it, whenever we decide to stop entertaining the circus You see, I've been saying this a lot lately too. You know, politics is downwind from culture. And we legitimately have to create a culture of so much creativity, of so much awareness and so much power that the people understand their individuality, to where we stop adhering to an increasing government or an increasing system which serves or which seeks to keep us subservient. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Season 8 debut of Factions of Freedom. This is Reforming the World, Criminalizing Contemplation, and Our Image of Man. You know, if 2019 is going to be anything like 2018, we've definitely got our work cut out for us. And while I see all these things happening, all this really means for me is just looking at things in the context of how can we fix this? There are multiple problems amassing from every single direction, and we see so many people going after these solutions. It excites me that we're even able to be alive in this time frame, that we're even able to be blessed to see these types of things take place. And normal change is going to have to happen within such a short amount of time. All we can really do is try to throw out our best and hope that it works. However, gang, that's all I really have for you. I'm going to be doing more and releasing more of these features that we're debuting, but step by step, one step at a time, am I right? Like I said, that's all I really have for you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. And as always, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, out. Be sure to check out all the links in the description bar below. I'm talking about the United for Common Ground Media Summit, the episode with Patrick Vincent, as well as the episode with RZA. We're putting out work, and we have a lot more to get out to you guys. Hit those links. Go to the website. We're doing it all for you.